Colleagues, it is my honor today to rise and request that this House adjourn in memory of Randy E. Paragary, a pioneer in Sacramento's nightlife and dining scene. And those of you on the floor, I just want to thank you for remaining here. He devoted his life to hospitality. We are joined today by his wife, Stacy, his son, Sam, his daughter, Lisa. So I thank you for this conferment of hospitality to these Sacramentos who made such a difference. And when I say he was a pioneer of the dining scene, it's almost, I need to point out that in the 1970s, there was not a restaurant scene in Sacramento. Yes, Frank Fats was here, Brandon's was here, the Broiler were here, there were places in town, but the concept of a dining scene, a restaurant scene in Sacramento would have been foreign in the 60s and 70s, into the 80s. This is a man who, by his devotion to his craft and his community, for he grew up in Sacramento and stayed in Sacramento, had a transformative influence on the downtown. I remember when the K Street Mall was a wasteland, when J Street was a wasteland, when there was just not activity in the downtown, Sacramento, the old cow town. That's what it was like when Randy Paragary determined that he would try to engage in hospitality. And I point this out because it's so easy to enjoy the nightlife in Sacramento today, the restaurant scene, but I just want you to go back 40 years, 50 years, and think about the qualities of an individual who would determine that they are going to pursue a work in restaurant hospitality. It's like, it takes incredible vision, persistence, industry, unflagging devotion, climbing a difficult hill. I think of Randy Paragary in terms of the building across the street from us, OB1. Bring me people, it does say men, to match my mountains. You weren't a pioneer in California coming over those mountains except with extraordinary hope, hard work, every day a renewed effort, using your time well to get over the mountains. All of these qualities we see in Randy Paragary. Randy passed away on August 13th of this year at the age of 74. He had a very hard-fought battle with cancer. He was born on November 8, 1946. He would graduate eventually from C.K. McClatchy High School here in Sacramento. Then he went on to Sacramento State and my alum, McGeorge School of Law. He is a graduate also of McGeorge, so he preceded me there. In 1969, Randy Paragary found his calling in hospitality, opening his very first live music club, the Parapal Palace, a saloon on 30th and O Streets. And he welcomed in those young people of that era that came in with their long hair, wanting to listen to the music and enjoy good times. In 1983, he took on a new business venture that would become the backbone of his success and really set the stage for the reinvention of restauranting in Sacramento. Located on 28th and N Streets, frequented by former Speaker Willie Brown, who would hold court there, Randy established the famous Paragary's restaurant. It was such a success, it became a model for Cafe Bernardo, Central Cocina Mexicana. Randy Paragary was very devoted to his home city of Sacramento and bullish on his future, and never flagged. He just kept working away at it. He was always interested in new business ventures, and he also left a legacy that is beyond the restaurants behind. He certainly believed in being an entrepreneur, and he encouraged his employees to branch out and to grow and to develop. And he partnered with some of his most ambitious employees in the restaurant business. He achieved success, and I remind you, starting from the dark, dank early days of Sacramento didn't have a restaurant scene, through this great perseverance, by infusing his brilliance, passion, and exuberance into his work. He loved people, and Randy Paragary never missed a moment to enjoy to its utmost good company, laughter, and memory making. Shortly before his death, the visionary bent of Randy Paragary showed itself anew as he led in the startup of a new kind of hospitality business that he'd never undertaken before, hotels. His Fort Sutter Hotel at 28th and on 28th Street opened last year leaves no doubt that Randy Paragary's vision and imagination was unflagging. Today, the Sacramento region has become a haven for chefs and farm-to-fork cuisine, a tremendous part of Sacramento life that every member of this body enjoys, actually. That Randy Paragary was the pioneer of and set that ball rolling. You know, it says of life, Ralph Waldo Emerson said, an institution is the lengthened shadow of one person. Sometimes you might look at someone's life and say, well, over the course of their life, they achieved a great deal. They just showed a long persistence in the same direction. You know, this power of persistence, of just staying a course, keeping at it. He did go to law school, but he determined that hospitality business is where his heart was, and he poured himself into it and transformed Sacramento. He autographed his work with quality. All of these things we associate with greatness, you see in Randy Paragary. So I want to thank you all for this opportunity to adjourn in his memory. This individual who had a transformative effect on Sacramento, on the quality of life that members experience here so far from home. He touched each one of us. And he did it with great grace and welcoming and just touching people's lives, because you can't succeed in this business without everyone uniformly finding that to encounter you and your work and what you've established was good for them. So what a tremendous legacy of Randy Paragary, and I thank you for the opportunity to adjourn in his honor today. Memory.
Thank you, Ms. Cooley. Ms. Calderon, you are recognized on this adjournment in memory.
Mr. Speaker and members, my heart is heavy today as I rise to join my colleagues to say goodbye to my friend, Randy Paragary. I met Randy in 1985 when I was hired as a waitress at Paragary's. He was sitting in my section, so I nervously approached and asked if he would like a drink. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lisa," I said. He smiled ear to ear. "That's my daughter's name," he said, and ordered a Cuba Libre. I politely walked away and went back to the bar to ask what a Cuba Libre was. The bartender smiled and said, "He could have just ordered a rum and coke. He's messing with you." I looked back and he was grinning. As an entrepreneur and member of the Sacramento community, Randy was an icon. Many of us native Sacramentans were just 6 degrees of separation from him. You may have read about the people set on their life or business path in a way connected to Randy. From the time I served him a Cuba Libre, Randy influenced in some way my personal and career path. At Paragary's, I met a political mentor that would start me on my political journey, a future employer that would start me on a 25-year career in energy, and the love of my life. That is, I met Speaker Willie Brown Jr., the future president of Southern California Edison, Bob Foster, and my husband, Chuck. Randy loved people and wasn't afraid to show it. He was a good listener and genuinely interested in whatever people had to share. To this day, I can't tell you if Randy was a Democrat or a Republican, but he particularly loved and respected legislators and other political people. Many times, members would come into the restaurant late and alone. Politics can be a lonely business. Randy would always sit and talk with them. He kept their confidence, and he was protective of them. People always felt good when Randy was around. He was a devoted husband, proud father, and loyal friend. I can remember when Stacy first walked into Paragary's. Randy's whole demeanor changed. She was a calming force and gave him balance. Stacy brought out the best in him. Randy loved his children, Lisa and Sam. I remember in the summers, we never worried if someone failed to show up for a shift because Randy would just ask Lisa to fill in. She was always there to help, and Randy adored her. He felt no less for Sam. When I first walked into the Fort Sutter Hotel earlier this year, I bumped into Randy. As we were catching up on our families, he told me how proud he was that Sam was going to UC Berkeley, and that the one silver lining of COVID was that he got to spend more time with his son. The last time I saw Randy was at the Fort Sutter Hotel. He was with Stacy. I was on my way to Paragary's to attend a women's caucus event for the first partner. Randy mentioned that he had never met her, and I told him I hadn't met her either. So I said, why don't we walk over and meet her together? I remember she was equally excited to meet him because she talked to him for about 10 minutes. And he just looked so happy. You know, he was really in his element. And that's the way I want to remember him. It's hard for Sacramentans to think of Sacramento without thinking of Randy Paragary. But Randy has also left his mark on California, whether it was a company he shared with those who found their way to his doors, or the policy that was made over dinners served on his tabletops, or the political events hosted at his restaurants. He was a part of the fabric that nurtured change in the future of California. I respectfully ask that you join me and my colleagues in adjourning in memory of a great Californian, Randy Paragary.
Thank you, Ms. Calderon. And Mr. Cooper, you too are recognized on this adjournment in memory.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I too would like to adjourn in the memory of Randy Paragary, a longtime restaurateur and pioneer of good food, nightlife in the Sacramento area. I had the pleasure of knowing Randy, his wife Stacy, his daughter Lisa, and his son Sam. I last saw Randy probably about 3 months ago at the Fort Sutter. I was there for dinner at Cafe Bernardo, and who was there but Randy, Stacy, and Sam eating dinner. Sat down and talked with them for about a half hour. And prior to Fort Sutter being built for the past 2 years, every time I saw Randy and Stacy, talked about how proud he was and excited he was to build that hotel, and it's an outstanding hotel. You know, Randy was a kind of person that was passionate, who cared deeply about his community. Besides his restaurants being phenomenal, his restaurants touched the lives of hundreds of people. Countless former employees, including chefs and restaurant workers, have gone on to open their own restaurants. And Randy was a special man and cemented his place in Sacramento history. He loved his family very dearly. Randy will be truly missed, but never forgotten. Thank you for the opportunity to adjourn in the memory of Randy Paragary.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. And Mr. Cooley, you are again recognized.
Colleagues, I just want to acknowledge the family who is here today and their guests. We have his wife Stacy, his daughter Lisa, his son Sam up here above me. Also, friends Steve and Raynell Markstein are here in the chambers today. And to the family, I want to say, because you live in Sacramento, you will always hear the phrase River City. And I want to share with you that when you hear the phrase River City, think of the way in which Randy carved a channel through this town, left his mark. You know, it is said of rivers that a river cuts through rock, not by power, but because of its persistence. And here in River City, that is exactly what Randy Paragary did. He cut his way through this, left an indelible mark. It is a great legacy, but we are very sad to join you in your loss today. And I do request we adjourn in their memory.